All right, looks like we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to the live stream for our first presidential debate. I'm Austin Petersen, former presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, and I'm very grateful that you would all tune in and watch my live commentary of the debate tonight. As you know, I ran for president of the United States this year on the Libertarian Party, competing against Gary Johnson and John McAfee for the presidential candidacy. And while I didn't win the nomination, it seems as if I was successful in sparking a movement for the principles and ideas that I really care about and we're listening really care about as well. Tonight's debate will be between business mogul Donald Trump of New York as well as Hillary Clinton of Arkansas. She was a senator in New York, of course, but everybody knows that her and Bill are Arkansans for life. So that's where we'll place her at tonight. And I'm really excited to see what's going to happen between these two because, of course, everybody knows what Donald Trump's personality is like. Big, brash, and boisterous versus Hillary Clinton's more understated, moderate, liberal Democrat type style. So it's going to be an exciting debate, no doubt. And I'm really curious to see what's going to happen because commentators all day have been speculating about what was going to go down between the two of them. And my own personal take was that if Donald Trump makes this a debate about personalities, he will win the debate tonight. And if it's a debate about the issues, I think Hillary Clinton will have him trumped. And the reason why is because simply Hillary Clinton has experience in elected office. Secretary of State, she's been a senator, she was First Lady, and she's spent years inside the Washington, D.C. bubble learning about how the system works. And my prediction has always been that I thought that Hillary would win it outright, just because I thought Donald Trump would not be able to build the type of coalitions that Republicans usually need to win. He's been very bad about picking up minorities. He's not well liked necessarily among the Hispanic community because of some of his stances on immigration and some of his remarks against Mexicans being rapists. And while Donald Trump was able to parlay that into a win for the Republican primary, we don't know exactly what's going to happen when it looks at the general electorate because the general electorate is nothing like the Republican Party. Looks like the debate's going to start in about 40 seconds, but I do want to give a shout out, of course, to Governor Gary Johnson and Bill Weld, who I do think should be in this debate tonight, and I do think that it is a complete sham that these two gentlemen going to be included in the presidential and vice presidential debate. To me, I think that it's an absolute tragedy, and it shows to me that we do not really have a democracy in this country. The two major parties control our system of governance to the hilt. And a lot of people had said, Austin, well, if you had been the candidate, you would have gotten enough to get into the debates. And I don't even know if that's true. I'd like to believe that, but the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, that even if I perhaps had polled at 15%, the CPD could have turned around and said, hey, well, we're going to change it now to we're going to change it to 20%. So the debate is going to get started. I'll have the commentary rolling in the background as well. I hope you guys enjoy the show. You guys should still be able to hear my commentary. This will be rolling over the debate as it's going on, and it looks like it will be starting up here momentarily. But like I said earlier, we were talking about the Commission on Presidential Debates, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous that the two parties have this bipartisan stranglehold on our system of democracy here in the United States. And quite frankly, if I was Gary Johnson, I would be going out and protesting right outside the debate commission. And I read earlier today that Jill Stein actually, I don't know if she got arrested, but I read on thehill.com that Jill Stein actually was either arrested or she was taken away by police. And so it seems like Jill Stein's got some cojones. Anyways, so looks like it's starting, guys. Enjoy, or just drink because it's terrible.
Hillary failed on the economy. Everything she touched didn't work out. Nothing.
Even if you're totally opposed to Donald Trump, you may still have some questions about me. Good evening. I'm Judy Woodruff.
And I'm Gwen Eiffel. Welcome to this PBS NewsHour special coverage of the first debate between the two major party presidential candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. The stage is set at Hofstra University on Long Island, New York. With the election 43 days away and the race tightening, a lot is on the line tonight, Judy.
It certainly is, Gwen, and given that this is the first time these two have faced each other one-on-one, Lester Holt of NBC News will be moderating. Joining us at the table are our regular contributors, syndicated columnist Mark Shields, New York Times columnist David Brooks, and from the Cook Political Report, Amy Walter. We welcome all of you here for the next 2 hours. Amy, let's start with you. What are you looking for?
Each of these candidates has an enthusiasm gap problem within their own party, so they've got to get their partisans fired up. For Hillary Clinton, it's young people. For Donald Trump, he's got to get those white college-educated voters back into the Republican fold where they've been. And then they got to get those voters, both of them, who are torn, don't like either choice they have in front of them, to pick them.
Mark Shields, what would you surprise you the most of what these candidates might or might not do tonight?
Does Donald Trump dare to be boring? Does he come out sedated / presidential? And can Hillary Clinton, who's a marvelous and superior deliverer of information, make an emotional connection with American voters?
David, what are you on the edge of your seat looking for?
We've been around each other too long. I wrote down emotional connection. This is not a cognitive night. This is not philosophy. This is not grand strategy. It's that moment of intimacy, that unscripted moment when the unconscious is revealed that will be replayed on YouTube over and over and over again. And so it's just, is he commanding or is he cruel? Is she relatable, and is she seem calmly smart? And it's whether people get that vibe, the first date vibe, that'll determine the night.
Is this about what they know or who they are?
Just so you know, guys, I am still here, and I will be commenting as the show is going on tonight. Right now, it looks like they've got some live commenters going on, but I am here in the background, and as the debate begins and starts, I will be offering my live commentary, so don't worry about it. The debate volume itself is going to be turned down a little bit low, so I'll try and turn it up for you guys if you need me to. But right now, the reason why this debate commentary is so low is so that you guys can hear my voice over it. So anyways, we'll go ahead and I'll just go ahead and just chit-chat while these guys are doing their thing, because it looks like the debate itself isn't starting yet. But anyways, I just wanted to finish what I was saying earlier about myself in the presidential debates. Obviously, I'm sad that I'm not there tonight, because I would love to be standing up there debating Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and just showing them for what they are, which are two sides of the same bird. Both of these candidates are going to give us more big government tonight. And Donald Trump is going to say that he's going to build a wall, and Hillary Clinton is going to say that we need to expand Medicare, we need to expand Social Security. Looks like the debate is starting. I'm going to go ahead and hop back over to it and continue this on the other side. There we go.
The commission drafted tonight's format, and the rules have been agreed to by the campaigns. The 90-minute debate is divided into 6 segments, each 50 minutes long. We'll explore 3 topic areas tonight: achieving prosperity, America's direction, and securing America. At the start of each segment, I will ask the same lead-off question to both candidates, and they will each have up to 2 minutes to respond. From that point until the end of the segment, we'll have an open discussion. The questions are mine and have not been shared with the commission or the campaigns. The audience here in the room has agreed to remain silent so that we can focus on what the candidates are saying. I will invite you to applaud, however, at this moment as we welcome the candidates. Democratic nominee for President of the United States, Hillary Clinton, and Republican nominee for President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Good luck to you. Trump, good luck to you.
Hillary's looking pretty healthy tonight. I don't know, guys. Are we taking bets on whether she keels over or not?
Well, I don't expect us to cover all the issues of this campaign tonight, but I remind everyone there are 2 more presidential debates scheduled. We are going to focus on many of the issues that voters tell us are most important, and we're going to press for specifics. I am honored to have this role, but this evening belongs to the candidates and just as important to the American people. Candidates, we look forward to hearing you articulate your policies and your positions, as well as your visions and your values. So, let's begin. We're calling this opening segment Achieving Prosperity, and central to that is jobs. There are 2 economic realities in America today. There's been a record 6 straight years of job growth, and new census numbers show incomes have increased at a record rate after years of stagnation. However, income inequality remains significant, and nearly half of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Beginning with you, Secretary Clinton, why are you a better choice than your opponent to create the kinds of jobs that will put more money into the pockets of American workers?
Well, thank you, Lester, and thanks to Hofstra for hosting us. The central question in this election is really what kind of country we want to be and what kind of future we'll build together. Today is my granddaughter's 2nd birthday, so I think about this a lot. First, we have to build an economy that works for everyone, not just those at the top. That means we need new jobs, good jobs, with rising incomes. I want us to invest in you. I want us to invest in your future. That means jobs in infrastructure, in advanced manufacturing, in innovation and technology, clean renewable energy, and small business, because most of the new jobs will come from small business. We also have to make the economy,
Unless you're a coal miner and she wants to shut you down.
Raising the national minimum wage, and also guarantee, finally, equal pay for women's work. I also want to see more companies do profit sharing. If you help create the profits, you should be able to share in them, not just the executives at the top. And I want to
None of this is the president's authority. The president has no authority to do anything she's saying right now.
And work. I've heard from so many of you about the difficult choices you face and the stresses that you're under. So let's have paid family leave, earned sick days. Let's be sure we have affordable child care and debt-free college. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it by having the wealthy pay their fair share and close the corporate loopholes. Finally, we tonight are on the stage together, Donald Trump and I. Donald, it's good to be with you. We're going to have a debate where we are talking about the important issues facing our country. You have to judge us. Who can shoulder the immense, awesome responsibilities of the presidency? Who can put into action the plans that will make your life better? I hope that I will be able to earn your vote on November 8th.
Very good intro by Secretary Clinton, except for the fact that she has no authority to accomplish the goals that she's laid out for herself. Now Donald Trump takes the stage.
Our jobs are fleeing the country. They're going to Mexico. They're going to many other countries. You look at what China is doing to our country.
We're losing low-paying jobs, but we're gaining high-paying jobs in the United States.
And there's nobody in our government to fight them. And we have a very good fight, and we have a winning fight, because they're using our country as a piggy bank to rebuild China, and many other countries are doing the same thing. So we're losing our good jobs, so many of them. When you look at
but we're gaining better jobs, like development jobs.
Said it's the 8th wonder of the world. They're building plants anywhere in the world, some of the most sophisticated, some of the best plants. With the United States, as he said, not so much. So Ford is leaving. You see,
the Chinese economy is in shambles, by the way. They've had to devalue their currency.
Leaving Michigan, leaving Ohio, they're all leaving. And we can't allow it to happen anymore. As far as child care is concerned and so many other things, I think Hillary and I agree on that. We probably disagree a little bit as to...
Of course you agree. You're both big government statists.
Perhaps we'll be talking about that later. But we have to stop our jobs from being stolen from us. We have to stop our companies.
They took our jobs. They took our jobs.
The United States, and with it, firing all of their people. All you have to do is take a look at Carrier air conditioning.
It's exactly what Putin did in Russia.
They fired 1,400 people. They're going to Mexico. So many, hundreds and hundreds of companies are doing this.
Well, lower their tax rates.
We cannot let it happen. Under my plan, I'll be reducing taxes tremendously, from 35% to 15% for companies, small and big businesses. That's going to be a job creator.
That's what I like to hear.
Since Ronald Reagan. It's going to be a beautiful thing to watch. Companies will come, they will build, they will expand, new companies will start, and I look very, very much forward to doing it. We have to renegotiate our trade deals, and we have to stop these countries from stealing our companies and our jobs.
Secretary Clinton, would you like to respond?
Well, I think that trade is an important issue. Of course, we are 5% of the world's population. We have to trade with the other 95%. And we need to have smart, fair trade deals. We also, though, need to have a tax system that rewards work and not just financial transactions. And the kind of plan that Donald has put forth would be trickle-down economics all over again.
Trickle-down economics is a made-up statement. That doesn't exist. There's no such thing as trickle-down economics. She's talking about supply-side economics.
That we've ever had. I call it trumped-up trickle-down, because that's exactly what it would be.
Clever.
That is not how we grow the economy. we just have a different view about what's best for growing the economy, how we make investments that will actually produce jobs and rising incomes. I think we come at it from somewhat different perspectives. I understand that. You know, Donald was very fortunate in his life, and that's all to his benefit. He started his business with $14
by trading
million
overseas.
borrowed from his father.
Donald Trump got
And he
very
really
rich
believes
because he
that
made trade deals with Malaysia. His companies are manufacturing in Mexico and China as well.
I have a different experience. My father was a small businessman. He worked really hard. He printed drapery fabrics on long tables where he pulled out those fabrics and he went down with a silk screen and dumped the paint in and took the squeegee and kept going. And so what I believe is the more we can do for the middle class, the more we can invest in you, your education, your skills, your future, the better we will be off and the better we'll grow. That's the
If
kind
I take money out of your
I want us
pocket
to
and
see
give it to
again.
myself,
Let me follow up
you don't
with
call
Mr.
that
Trump again.
investment. You
You've
call
talked
that
about creating
theft.
25 million jobs, and you've promised to bring back millions of jobs for Americans. How are we going to bring back the industries that have left this country for cheaper labor overseas? How specifically
gonna bomb the hell
are you
out
gonna
of 'em.
tell American manufacturers that you have to come back?
Well, for one thing, and before we start on that, my father gave me a very small loan in 1975, and I built it into a company that's worth many, many billions of dollars with some of the greatest assets in the world. And I say that only because that's the kind of thinking that our country needs. Our country's in deep trouble. We don't know what we're doing when it comes to devaluations, and all of these countries all over the world, especially China, they're the best ever at it. What they're doing to us
Actually,
is
they're not.
a
They're
very,
going
very
broke.
sad thing. So we have to do that. We have to renegotiate our trade deals. And Lester, they're taking our jobs, they're giving incentives, they're doing things that, frankly, we don't do. Let me give you the example of Mexico. They have a VAT tax. We're in a different system. When we sell into Mexico, there's a tax. When they sell in automatic, 16% approximately. When
Guys,
they
you
sell
got to take
into
a look
us,
at this. Let's pull up
there's
this
no
this
tax.
data
It's
right
a
here.
defective agreement. It's been defective for a long time, many years, but the
All you have to do
politicians
is a basic
haven't
Google
done anything
search.
about it. Now, in all fairness to
Look at this.
Secretary
China, biggest threat to global
Yes.
economy, former
Okay.
IF chief. Their biggest threat to global economic stability because of their soaring debt and stagnant growth. China is not a model that the United States needs to look to,
When she started
guys.
talking about this, it was really very recently. She's been doing this for 30 years. And why hasn't she made the agreements better? The NAFTA agreement is defective just because of the tax and many other reasons, but just because of the fact.
Let me interrupt just a moment. But
Secretary Clinton and others, politicians, should have been doing this for years, not right now because of the fact that we've created a movement. They should have been doing this for years. What's happened to our jobs and our country and our economy generally is, look, we owe $20 trillion. We cannot do it any longer, Lester.
back to the question, though, how do you specifically bring back jobs? American manufacturers, how do you make them bring the jobs back?
Well, the first thing you do is don't let the
Through
jobs
force.
leave. The companies are leaving. I could name, there are thousands of them. They're leaving, and they're leaving in bigger numbers than ever. And what you do is you say, fine, you want to go to Mexico or some other country, good luck. We wish you a lot of luck. But if you think you're going to make your air conditioners or your cars or your cookies or whatever you make and bring them into our country without a tax, you're wrong. And once
Yep.
you say
See,
you're going to have to
there it
tax
is.
them coming in, and our politicians never do this because they have special interests, and the special interests want those companies to leave because in many cases they own the companies. So what I'm saying is we can stop them from leaving. We have to stop them from leaving, and that's a big, big factor.
Let me let Secretary Clinton get
Well,
in there.
let's stop for a second and remember where we were 8 years ago. We had the worst financial crisis, the Great Recession, the worst since the 1930s. That was in large part because of tax policies that slashed taxes on the wealthy, failed to invest in the middle class, took their eyes off of Wall Street, and created a perfect storm.
They
In
overregulated Wall
Donald
Street.
was one of the people who rooted for the housing crisis. He said back in 2006, gee, I hope it does collapse because then I can go in and buy some and make some money. Well, it did collapse.
That's called business, by the way.
9
Yeah, exactly.
million
Trump is
people-
right.
9 million people lost their jobs. 5 million people lost their homes, and $13 trillion in family wealth was wiped out.
Yeah, and let me just explain to you why. The reason that occurred is because the George Bush administration passed the Community Reinvestment Act, which forced basically banks to offer loans to people with high risk of defaulting on their loans. The government stimulated the housing sector in such a way, and then it collapsed thanks to the Federal Reserve.
Experts have looked at what I've proposed and looked at what Donald's proposed, and basically they've said this, that if his tax plan, which would blow up the debt by over $5 trillion and would, in some instances, disadvantage middle-class families compared to the wealthy, were to go into effect, we would lose 3.5 million jobs and maybe have another recession. They've looked at my plans and they've said, okay, if we can do this, and I intend to get it done, we will have 10 million more new jobs, because we will be making investments where we can grow the economy. Take clean energy. Some country is going to be the clean energy superpower of the 21st century. Donald thinks that climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese. I think it's real.
I did not.
Science is real.
I do not say that.
And I think it's
I do not say
important that we grip this and deal with it both at home and abroad. And here's what we can do. We can deploy 500 million more solar panels. We can have enough clean energy to power every
Just
home.
FYI, guys,
We can
take a look at
build
this. This is
new
the Federal
modern
Reserve's
electric
balance
grid.
sheet.
That's a lot of jobs. That's a
In the wake
lot
of
of
the
new
financial
economic
crisis.
activity. So I've tried to be very specific
Right here.
about what we
Housing
can
loans. This is what
and
happened
should
in the
do,
run-up to
and
the
I am
crisis.
determined that we're going to get the economy really moving
Right
again.
here. The Fed is the
Building on the
culprit.
progress we've made over the last 8 years, but never going back to what got us in trouble in the first place.
Mr. Trump.
She talks about solar panels. We invested in a solar company, our country. That was a disaster. They lost plenty of money.
Absolutely
on that
right. That
one.
was Solyndra.
Now, look, I'm a great believer in all forms of energy, but we're putting a lot of people out of work. Our energy policies are a disaster. Our country is losing so much in terms of energy, in terms of paying off our debt. You can't do what you're looking to do with $20 trillion in debt. The Obama administration, from the time they've come in, is over 230 years worth of debt, and he's topped it. He's doubled it in a course of almost 8 years, 7.5 years to be semi-exact. So I will tell you this, we have to do a much better job at keeping our jobs, and we have to do a much better job at giving companies incentive to build new companies or to expand, because they're not doing it. And all you have to do is look at Michigan and look at Ohio and look at all of these places where so many of their jobs and their companies are just leaving. They're gone. And Hillary, I just ask you this. You've been doing this for 30 years. Why are you just thinking about these solutions right now? For 30 years you've been doing it, and now you're just starting to think of solutions.
Well, actually,
I will bring back jobs. You can't bring back jobs.
Well, actually, I have thought about this quite a bit.
Yeah, for 30
and
years.
I have, well, not quite that long. I think my husband did a pretty good job in the 1990s. I think a lot about what worked and how we can make it work again.
Well, he approved
3 million
NAFTA.
new
He
jobs,
approved
a balanced
NAFTA,
budget,
which is the single
and
worst trade deal
incomes-
ever.
He's going to try and knock her off her
incomes went
pedestal.
up for everybody. Manufacturing jobs went up also in
She's
the
gotta keep her
1990s,
cool.
if we're actually going to look at the facts. When I was in the Senate, I had a number of trade deals that came before me, and I held them all to the same test. Will they create jobs in America? Will they raise incomes in America? And are they good for our national security? Some of them I voted for. The biggest one, a multinational one known as CAFTA, I voted against. And because I hold the same standards as I look at all of these trade deals. But let's not assume that trade is the only challenge we have in the economy. I think it is a part of it, and I've said what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a special prosecutor. We're going to enforce the trade deals we have, and we're going to hold people accountable. When I was Secretary of State, we
Wow.
actually
So Hillary
increased
Clinton is sitting here
American
calling for a special
exports globally
prosecutor to go up
30%.
against these
We
corporations.
increased them
Talk
to
about
China
tyranny.
50%. So I know how to really work to get new jobs and to get exports that help to create more new jobs.
Very
Well, you haven't done it in 30 years or 26 years.
Well,
any number you
I've
wanna
been
do.
a senator,
You haven't
Donald,
done it.
and
You haven't
I
done
have
it.
been a
And excuse
Secretary
me,
of State, and I have
Your
done
husband signed
a lot.
NAFTA, which was one of the worst things that ever happened
Well,
to the
that's your
manufacturing
opinion.
industry.
That is your
You go to New England, you go to Ohio, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, bad for the manufacturing industry, but good for consumers,
You will see
Donald.
devastation where manufacturing is down 30, 40, sometimes 50%. NAFTA is the worst.
We don't
trade
need
deal
a manufacturing
maybe ever
economy.
signed
We need a
anywhere, but certainly
development
ever signed
economy.
in
We
this
need to be
country. Now,
developers.
you want
Who wants to
approve
do those jobs
Trans-Pacific
anyway?
Partnership. You were totally in favor of it. Then you heard what I was saying, how bad it is, and you said, I can't win that debate. But you know,
I guarantee you Donald Trump has not read the TPP.
and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever
Well,
top NAFTA.
That is just not accurate. I was against it once it was finally negotiated and the terms were laid out. I wrote about that in...
You called it the
I
gold
wrote about-
standard.
Well, I hope...
You called it the gold standard of trade
And
deals. You
you know
said it's
what?
the finest deal you've ever seen.
No.
And then you heard what I said about it, and all of a sudden you were against it.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality, but
Oh, yeah.
that is
Nice.
not the facts. The facts are, I did say I hoped it would be a good deal, but when it was negotiated,
Not.
which I was not responsible for, I concluded it wasn't. I wrote about that.
So is it
in
President
my
Obama's
book
fault? Is it
before
President Obama's
you
fault?
even announced. Look, there
Secretary,
are
is it President Obama's fault?
There are
Because
different-
he's pushing it.
There are different views about what's good for our country, our economy, and our leadership in the world. And I think it's important to look at what we need to do to get the economy going again. That's why I said new jobs with rising incomes, investments, not in more tax cuts that would add $5 trillion to the debt.
But you have no
in
plan.
Oh, I do.
Secretary,
in fact,
you
I
have no
written
plan.
a book about it. It's called Stronger Together. You can pick it up
That's
tomorrow.
about all you-
Folks,
at
we're
the
gonna-
bookstore or at an airport near you.
We're gonna move to-
But it's because I see this. We need to have strong growth, fair growth, sustained growth. We also have to look at how we...
I think Trump so far is doing a pretty good job of trying to knock Hillary off her pedestal. If Trump can get Hillary to crack, then he's going to win this debate tonight right now, because the way that he blusters and filibusters over her, that's good debate skills. That's the kind of stuff that I would have brought to this debate. I would have been, excuse me, and that's how you win a debate. So far, she's staying pretty cool, but he's doing a pretty good job of knocking her off. Let's get back to it.
In history. You are going to approve one of the biggest tax increases in history. You are going to drive business out. Your regulations are a disaster, and you're going to increase regulations all over the place. And by
And
the
so
way,
is Donald.
my tax cut is the biggest since Ronald Reagan. I'm very proud of it. It will create tremendous numbers of new jobs. But regulations, you are going to regulate these businesses out of existence. When I go around, Lester, I tell you this, I've been all over. And when I go around, despite the tax cut, the things that business and people like the most is the fact that I'm cutting regulation. You have regulations on top of regulations, and new companies cannot form, and old companies are going out of business, and you want to increase the regulations and make them even worse. I'm going to cut regulations, but I'm going to cut taxes big league, and you're going to raise taxes big league. End of story.
Let me get you to pause right there, because we're going to
Yes,
move it.
well,
About time the moderator
that-
stepped in on
that
this.
That can't be left
Please,
to
just
stand.
take
You
30
know,
seconds,
I
then we're gonna go
kind
on.
of assumed that there would be a lot of these charges and claims. And so
Facts.
we have taken the homepage of my website, HillaryClinton.com, and we've turned it into a fact checker. So if you want to see in real time what the facts are, please go and
Real
take a
time
look.
propaganda,
Because
folks, over at
Take a look at mine
HillaryClinton.com.
also.
not
Yeah.
add a penny to the debt, and your plans would add $5 trillion to the debt. What I have proposed would cut regulations and streamline them for small businesses. What I have proposed would be paid for by raising taxes on the wealthy, because they have made all the gains in the economy. And I think it's
You could raise taxes on the wealthy at 100% and still not pay off this entire national debt. Both of these people are committing the Keynesian fallacy. They have no idea how government works. I would just love to get up there and curb stomp these two, because they're both committing grievous errors of economics.
You know what? It's no different than this. She's telling us how to fight ISIS. Just go to her website. She tells you how to fight ISIS on her website. I don't think General Douglas MacArthur would like that
All right,
too much.
The next segment, we're continuing
Well,
the
at
subject
least
of
I have a plan to fight
achieving
ISIS.
prosperity.
No, you're telling the enemy everything you want to do.
No, we're not.
See, you're telling
we're
the
not.
enemy everything
We
you
are-
want to do.
we
No
are
wonder
not
you've been
fighting-
fighting. No wonder you've been fighting ISIS your entire adult life.
Folks,
Go to the fact checkers, get
folks,
to work.
you are unpacking a lot here, and we're still in the issue of achieving prosperity. And I want to talk about taxes. The fundamental difference between the two of you concerns the wealthy. Secretary Clinton, you're calling for a tax increase in the wealthiest Americans. I'd like you to further defend that. And Mr. Trump, you're calling for tax cuts for the wealthy. I'd like you to defend that. And this next 2-minute answer goes to you, Mr. Trump.
Well, I'm really calling for major jobs because the wealthy are going to create tremendous jobs. They're going to expand their companies. They're going to do a tremendous job. I'm getting rid of the carried interest provision. And if you really look, it's not a tax. It's really not a great thing for the wealthy. It's a great thing for the middle class. It's a great thing for companies to expand. And when these people are going to put billions and billions of dollars into companies, and when they're going to bring $2.5 trillion back from overseas, where they can't bring the money back because politicians like Secretary Clinton won't allow them to bring the money back because the taxes are so onerous and the bureaucratic
Yeah, and you
red
want to
tape.
pass tariffs so that they can't sell their goods here in the United States.
They're leaving our country. And they're, believe it or not, leaving because taxes are too high and because some of them have lots of money outside of our country. And instead of bringing it back and putting the money to work because they can't work out a deal to, and everybody agrees it should be brought back, instead of that, they're leaving our country to get their money because they can't bring their money back into our country because of bureaucratic red tape, because they can't get together, because we have a president that can't sit them around a table and get them to approve something. And here's the thing, Republicans and Democrats agree that this should be done. $2.5 trillion. I happen to think it's double that. It's probably $5 trillion that we can't bring into our country, Lester. And with a little leadership, you'd get it in here very quickly, and it could be put to use on the inner cities and lots of other things, and it would be beautiful. But we have no leadership. And honestly, that starts with Secretary Clinton.
All right, you have 2 minutes on the same question to defend tax increases on the wealthiest Americans, Secretary Clinton.
I have a feeling that by the end of this evening, I'm going to be blamed for everything that's ever happened.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not? Just join the debate by saying more crazy things. Now, let me say,
there's nothing crazy about not letting our companies bring their money back into their country.
This is Secretary Clinton's 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, well, let's start the clock again, Lester.
Yeah.
We've looked at your tax proposals.
She's got to learn how to filibuster
I don't see
like him.
changes in the corporate tax rates
Look,
or
she's wearing her tyrant
the
red
kinds
today.
of proposals you're referring to that would cause the repatriation, bringing back of money that's stranded overseas. I happen to
Then you didn't
support
read
that.
it.
I happen to support that in a way that will actually
We're
work
talking about
to
having
our
a tax
benefit.
holiday and bringing it back
But when
money
I look
overseas
at what
that
you
people
have
have
proposed,
people
you
have stolen
have
overseas.
what is called now the Trump loophole, because it would so advantage you and the business you do. You've proposed
Who gave it that
an
name?
approach
First
that
ever. Who
has
gave
a
it that
$4
name?
This is
billion
Secretary Clinton's 2 minutes.
tax benefit for your family. And when you look at what
How much-
you are
how much for my
proposing,
family?
it is,
Lester, how much?
as I said, trumped up trickle down. Trickle down did not work. It got us into the mess we were in 2008 and 9. Slashing taxes on the wealthy hasn't worked, and a lot of really smart, wealthy people know that. And they are saying, hey, we need to...
I just want to cut off the secretary for a moment and give you guys a link that you guys need to read for further research on this one. This is at the Foundation for Economic Education. Fantastic article that will address these issues that they're discussing in this debate right now. This is There is No Such Thing as Trickle-Down Economics by Steve Horwitz. Make sure you guys get a copy of that. I'll drop that in the debate chat so that you can read that as well. Let's get back to the debate.
Economy. Broad-based, inclusive growth is what we need in America, not more advantages for people at the very top.
Mr. Trump,
Typical politician, all talk, no action, sounds good, doesn't work, never going to happen. Our country is suffering because people like Secretary Clinton have made such bad decisions in terms of our jobs and in terms of what's going on. Now, look, we have the worst revival of an economy since the Great Depression. And believe me, we're in a bubble right now. And the only thing that looks good is the stock market. But if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble. And we better be awfully careful. And we have a Fed that's doing political things. This Janet Yellen of the Fed. The Fed is doing political by keeping the interest rates at this level. And believe me, the day Obama goes off and he leaves and he goes out to the golf course for the rest of his life to play golf, when they raise interest
man,
rates,
then what
you're
a
gonna see
sweet
some
day it
very
will
bad
be.
things happen because the Fed is not doing their job. The Fed is being more political than Secretary Clinton.
Yeah, just keep in mind that this is the guy who just said a few weeks ago that the United States will never default because they can just print more money at the Federal Reserve. So he's talking out of both sides of his face right now.
Know if their potential president owes money to, who he owes it to, and any business conflicts. Don't Americans have a right to know if there are any conflicts of interest?
I don't mind releasing. I'm under a routine audit, and it'll be released. And as soon as the audit's finished, it'll be released. But you will learn more about Donald Trump by going down to the federal elections, where I filed a 104-page, essentially financial statement of sorts, the forms that they have. It shows income. In fact, the income, I just looked today, the income is filed at $694 million for this past year. $694 million. If you would have told me I was going to make that 15 or 20 years ago, I would have been very surprised. But that's the kind of thinking that our country needs. When we have a country that's doing so badly, that's being ripped off by every single country in the world, it's the kind of thinking that our country needs because everybody, Lester, we have a trade deficit with all of the countries that we do business with of almost $800 billion a year. You know what that is? That means who's negotiating these trade deals? We have people that are political hacks negotiating our trade deals.
The IRS has an audit of your taxes. You're perfectly free to release your taxes during an audit. And so the question, does the public's right to know outweigh your personal?
Well, I told you, I will release them as soon as the audit. Look, I've been under audit almost for 15 years. I know a lot of wealthy people that have never been audited. I said, do you get audited? I get audited almost every year. And in a way, I should become...
This is just useless blustering anyway. So let me just show you guys. I want to share with you guys an article at the Cato Institute right now that you guys can see to learn more about the trade deficit. Because Donald Trump doesn't understand that the trade deficit is not because of unfair trade practices or declining industrial competitiveness. It's actually, it reflects the flow of capital across international borders. And these flows are determined by national rates of savings and investment. This renders trade policy an ineffective tool for reducing a nation's trade deficit. So let me go ahead and pop this up for you guys. I want you guys to see this article because right now Trump's just talking about his taxes and really who cares about that. But I want you all to see this article right now. You can see this is the Cato Institute. And again, I'll drop this in the live chat so you guys can get the facts right there. Here we are by Dan Griswold over the Cato Institute. Take a look at this article about the trade deficit and learn a little bit more about what it is that they're really trying to communicate here. Okay, guys? So yeah, so far so good.
Switch here. For 40 years, everyone running for president has released their tax returns. You can go and see nearly, I think, 39, 40 years of our tax returns, but everyone has done it. We know the IRS has made clear there is no prohibition on releasing it when you're under audit. So you've got to ask yourself, why won't he release his tax returns? And I think there may be a couple of reasons. First, maybe he's not as rich as he says he is. Second, maybe he's not as charitable as he claims to be. Third, we don't know all of his business dealings, but we have been told through investigative reporting that he owes about $650 million to Wall Street and foreign banks. Or maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes, because the only years that anybody's ever seen were a couple of years when he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So if he's
smart.
paid zero, that means zero for troops.
Yeah, it does make him smart,
zero
actually.
for vets, zero for schools or health. And I think probably he's
See, the reason why he doesn't have to pay
that
taxes is because he makes charitable donations, and every single person has the right to do that. Let's talk about the donations made to the Hillary Clinton Foundation. How about that?
really important, even terrible, that he's trying to hide. And the financial disclosure statement, they don't give you the tax rate. They don't give you all the details that tax returns would. And it just seems to me that this is something that the American people deserve to see. And I have no reason to believe that he's ever going to release his tax returns, because there's something he's hiding. And we'll guess. We'll keep guessing at what it might be that he's hiding.
Probably those small hands.
But I think the question is, were he ever to get near the White House, what would be those conflicts? Who does he owe money to? Well, he owes you the answers to that, and he should provide them.
He also raised the issue of your emails. Do you want to respond to that?
I do. You know, I made a mistake using a private email.
That's for sure.
And if I had to do it over again, I would obviously do it differently. But I'm not going to make any excuses. It was a mistake, and I take responsibility for that.
Mr. Trump?
That was more than a mistake. That was done purposely, okay? That was not a mistake. That was done purposely. When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted. When you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful. And believe me, this country thinks it's disgraceful. It really thinks it's disgraceful also. As far as my tax returns, you don't learn that much from tax returns, that I can tell you. You learn a lot from financial disclosure.
He's right about that.
And you should go down and take a look at that. The other thing, I'm extremely underleveraged. The report that said 650, which, by the way, a lot of friends of mine that know my business said, boy, that's really not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money relative to what I had. The buildings that were in question, they said in the same report, which was, actually, it wasn't even a bad story, to be honest with you, but the buildings are worth $3.9 billion. And the 650 isn't even on that, but it's not 650, it's much less than that. But I could give you a list of banks. I would, if that would help you, I would give you a list of banks. These are very fine institutions, very fine banks. I could do that very quickly. I am very underleveraged. I have a great company. I have a tremendous income. And the reason I say that is not in a braggadocious way. It's because it's about time that this country had somebody running it that has an idea about money.
Yeah, well, it's hard to disagree with that.
Debt, and our country's a mess. You know, it's one thing to have $20 trillion in debt, and our roads are good, and our bridges are good, and everything's in great shape. Our airports.
No roads. Who's going to build the roads?
World country. You land at LaGuardia. You land at Kennedy. You land at LAX. You land at Newark. And you come in from Dubai and Qatar, and you see these incredible. You come in from China. You see these incredible airports, and you land. We've become a third world country. So the worst of all things has happened. We owe $20 trillion, and we're a mess. We haven't even started. And we've spent $6 trillion in the Middle East, according to a report that I just saw.
He's absolutely correct.
Whether it's 6 or 5, but it looks like it's 6. $6 trillion in the Middle East. We could have rebuilt our country twice. And it's really a shame. And it's politicians like Secretary Clinton that have caused this problem.
Boom. Absolutely correct.
Tremendous problems. We're a debtor nation. We're a serious debtor nation. And we have a country that needs new roads, new tunnels, new bridges, new airports, new schools, new hospitals.
Here comes the New Deal.
And we don't have the money
Trump's
because
New Deal.
it's been squandered on so many of your ideas.
Yeah.
Let you
And
respond,
maybe
and we'll move to our
because
next.
you haven't paid any federal income tax for a lot of years. And the other thing I think is important
It would
to
be
point out
squandered too,
is
believe me.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
If your main claim
It would be squandered.
to be president of the United States is your business, then I think we should talk about that. You know, your campaign manager said that you built a lot of businesses on the backs of little guys. And indeed, I have met a lot of the people who were stiffed by you and your businesses, Donald. I've met dishwashers, painters, architects, glass installers, marble installers, drapery installers, like my dad was, who you refused to pay when they finished the work that you asked them to do. We have an architect in the audience who designed one of your clubhouses at one of your golf courses. It's a beautiful facility. It immediately was put to use, and you wouldn't pay what the man needed to be paid what he was charging you.
Maybe he didn't do a good job, and I was unsatisfied with his work, which our country should do too.
Do the thousands of people that you have stiffed over the course of your business not deserve some kind of apology from someone who has taken their labor, taken the goods that they produced, and then refused to pay them? I can only say that I'm certainly relieved that my late father never did business with you. He provided a good middle-class life for us, but the people he worked for, he expected the bargain to be kept on both sides. And when we talk about your business, you've taken business bankruptcy 6 times. There are a lot of great business people that have never taken bankruptcy once.
And how many times have you gone bankrupt, or how many businesses have you started, Hillary?
Leverage. You even at one time suggested that you would try to negotiate down the national debt of the United States. Well, sometimes there's not a direct transfer of skills from business to government, but sometimes what happened in business would be really bad for government.
Let's let Mr.
And we need to be very clear about that.
Look, it's all words, it's all sound bites. I built an unbelievable company, some of the greatest assets anywhere in the world, real estate assets anywhere in the world, beyond the United States.
Actually, everybody knows that Trump Hotel is the worst hotel in Las Vegas.
But on occasion, 4 times, we used certain laws that are there. And when Secretary Clinton talks about people that didn't get paid, first of all, they did get paid a lot.
But how many jobs has Hillary Clinton created?
Of the nation. Now, if you want to change the laws, you've been there a long time, change the laws. But I take advantage of the laws of the nation because I'm running a company. My obligation right now is to do well for myself, my family, my employees, for my companies. And that's what I do. But what she doesn't say is the tens of thousands
Trump
of
is
people
absolutely
that
destroying
are
her right now.
Unbelievably happy and that love me. I'll give you an example. We're just opening up on Pennsylvania Avenue, right next to the White House. So if I don't get there one way, I'm going to get to Pennsylvania Avenue another. But we're opening the old post office. Under budget, ahead of schedule, saved tremendous money. I'm a year ahead of schedule. And that's what this country should be doing. We build roads and they cost 2 and 3 and 4 times what they're supposed to cost. We buy products for our military and they come in at costs that are so far above what they were supposed to be because we don't have people that know what they're doing. When we look at the budget is bad to a large extent because we have people that have no idea as to what to do and how to buy. The Trump International is way under budget and way ahead of schedule, and we should be able to do that for our country.
We're well behind schedule, so I want to move to our next segment. We move into our next segment talking about America's direction, and let's start by talking about race. The share of Americans who say race relations are bad in this country is the highest it's been in decades, much of it amplified by shootings of African Americans by police. As we've seen recently,
of course, nobody cares the fact that police actually shoot white people at a much higher rate. But hey, we're a larger percentage of the population.
So how do you heal the divide? Secretary Clinton, you get 2 minutes on this.
Well, you're right. Race remains a significant challenge in our country.
Yeah, because people like you make it that way, Hillary.
Unfortunately, race still determines too much. Often determines where people live, determines what kind of education in their public schools they can get, and yes, it determines how they're treated.
Like affirmative action, scholarship for minorities, it certainly does.
Those 2 tragic examples in both Tulsa and Charlotte. And we've got to do several things
burning things to
at
the
the
ground.
same time. We have to restore trust between communities and the police. We have to work to make sure that our police are using the best training, the best techniques, that they're well prepared to use force only when necessary. Everyone should be respected by the law, and everyone should respect the law. Right now, that's not the case in a lot of our neighborhoods. I have, ever since the first day of my campaign, called for criminal justice reform. I've laid out a platform that I think would begin to remedy some of the problems we have in the criminal justice system. But we also have to recognize, in addition to the challenges that we face with policing, there are so many good, brave police officers who equally want reform. So we have to bring communities together in order to begin working on that as a mutual goal. And we've got to get guns out of the hands of people who should not have them.
Oh, here it comes.
The gun epidemic
Oh,
is the
my
leading
God.
cause of death of young African American men. More than the next 9
Yeah, because they're getting shot by cops, Hillary.
to do 2 things, as I said. We have to restore trust. We have to work with the police. We have to make sure they respect the communities and the communities respect them.
Criminals aren't
And we have
buying
to
guns at
tackle
gun
the plague
stores, Hillary.
of gun violence, which is a big contributor to a lot of the problems that we're seeing today.
All right, Mr. Trump, you have 2 minutes. How do you heal the divide?
Yeah, not by taking away people's guns.
Doesn't want to use a couple of words, and that's law and order. We need law and order.
Oh boy, here comes
don't
the
have
fascist on the right.
We're not going to have a country. And when I look at what's going on in Charlotte, a city I love, a city where I have investments.
This is a guy
when
who
I
called
look
for
at
stop
what's
and
going on
frisk
throughout
recently.
various parts of our country, whether it's, I can just keep naming them all day long. We need law and order in our country. And I just got today, as you know, the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police. We just came in. We have endorsements from, I think, almost every police group, a large percentage of them in the United States. We have a situation where we have our inner cities, African Americans, Hispanics, are living in hell because it's so dangerous. You walk down the street, you get shot. In Chicago, they've had thousands of shootings, thousands, since January 1st. Thousands of shootings. And I'm saying, where is this? Is this a war-torn country? What are we doing? And we have to stop the violence. We have to bring back law and order in a place like Chicago where thousands of people have been killed, thousands over the last number of years. In fact, almost
Where they have
4,000
the
been
highest
killed
gun
since
control in the
Barack
country.
Obama became president. Almost 4,000 people in Chicago have been killed. We have to bring back law and order. Now, whether or not in a place like Chicago you do stop and frisk, which worked very well, Mayor Giuliani.
Totally
said it worked very well in
unconstitutional.
New York. It brought the crime rate way down.
And
We
correlation
take
is
the
not
gun away from
causation.
criminals that shouldn't be having it. We have gangs roaming the street, and in many cases, they're illegally here, illegal immigrants, and they have guns, and they shoot people. And we have to be very strong, and we have to be very vigilant. We have to know what we're doing. Right now, our police, in many cases, are afraid to do anything. We have to protect our inner cities because African American communities are being decimated by crime.
Your 2 minutes has expired, but I do want to follow up. Stop and frisk was ruled unconstitutional in New York because it largely singled out.
Absolutely unconstitutional, guys. Let me pull this up over here.
It went before
I want you guys to see
a
this.
judge who was a very against police
Pulling this up for
judge.
you guys.
It was
This is at
taken away from her,
libertarianrepublic.com. You
and
guys
our
are definitely going to want to see
Our new
this.
mayor refused to go forward.
I'm going to
with
drop the
case.
link in there
They
for you
would have
guys
won
to check
our
it out
bill.
later.
If you
But
look
this
at
is
it,
the
throughout the country, there are
libertarianrepublic.com.
many
Trump
places
proposing
where
suspension of Constitution in black
No,
communities.
the argument is that we have to take
This is over at
the guns away from these
libertarianrepublic.com.
people
Again,
that
I will
have
drop
them and
this
that are
in the
bad
chat for
people
you
that shouldn't
guys to
have them.
read and study a
These
little
are
bit more
felons. These are
later.
people that are bad people that shouldn't be. When you have 3,000 shootings in Chicago from January 1st, when you have 4,000 people killed in Chicago by guns from the beginning of the presidency of Barack Obama, his hometown, you have to have stop and frisk. You need more police. You need a better community relation. You don't have good community relations in Chicago. It's terrible. I have property there. It's terrible what's going on in Chicago. But when you look, and Chicago's not the only, you go to Ferguson, you go to so many different places. You need better relationships. I agree with Secretary Clinton on this. You need better relationships between the communities and the police because in some cases it's not good. But you look at Dallas where the relationships were really studied. The relationships were really a beautiful thing. And then 5 police officers were killed one night very violently. So there's some bad things going on, some really bad things.
Secretary Clinton,
but we need, Lester, we need law and order. And we need law and order in the inner cities because the people that are most affected by what's happening are African American and Hispanic people. And it's very unfair to them what our politicians are allowing to happen.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, I've heard Donald say this at his rallies, and it's really unfortunate that he paints such a dire, negative picture of black communities in our country. You know, the vibrancy of the black church, the black businesses that employ so many people, the opportunities that so many families are working to provide for their kids. There's a lot that we should be proud of and we should be supporting and lifting up. But we do always have to make sure we keep people safe. There are the right ways of doing it, and then there are ways that are ineffective. Stop and frisk was found to be unconstitutional.
She's absolutely correct.
And in part because it was ineffective. It did not do what it needed to do. Now, I believe in community policing, and in fact, violent crime is 1/2 of what it was in 1991.
And she's right about that.
Crime is down 40%.
And so are gun crimes,
we just don't want
Hillary.
to see it creep back up.
Yeah, and so are gun crimes, Hillary. Let's just make sure we remember that. The violent crime committed with guns has been declining since 1991. I'll pull up that factoid for you guys.
Consequences. Too many young African American and Latino men ended up in jail for nonviolent offenses, and it's just a fact that if you're a young African American man and you do the same thing as a young white man, you are more likely to be arrested, charged, convicted, and incarcerated. So we've got to address the systemic racism in our criminal justice system.
Yeah, we do, but we don't do that by taking away
law
people's
and
gun
order.
rights. Take a look here. We've had a massive decline in gun violence in the United States. Here's why. This is the Washington Post. Again, I'll be dropping these in the live chat thread.
Deal with mandatory minimum sentences, which have put too many people away for too long for doing too little. We need to have more second chance programs. I'm glad that we're ending private prisons in the federal system. I want to see them ended in the state system. You shouldn't have a profit motivation to fill prison cells with young Americans. So there are some positive ways we can work on this. And I believe strongly that common sense gun safety measures would assist us right now. And this is something Donald has supported along with the gun lobby. Right now, we've got too many military-style weapons on the streets. In a lot of places, our police are outgunned. We need comprehensive background checks.
Militarize the police, Hillary says. Take away guns from law-abiding citizens and give them to the cops.
And we finally need to pass a prohibition.
You know, a liberal Democrat is someone who believes that all cops are evil racists and that only they should have guns.
Too dangerous to buy a gun. So there are things we can do, and we ought to do it in a bipartisan way.
Secretary Clinton, last week you said we've got to do everything possible to improve policing, to go right at implicit bias. Do you believe that police are implicitly biased against black people?
Lester, I think implicit bias is a problem for everyone, not just police.
Well, that's a bad camera angle.
I think, unfortunately,
lighting
too
is very
many
bad on that shot.
of us in our great country
They need to cut away from that camera right
jump to
now.
conclusions about each other. And therefore, I think we need all of us to be asking hard questions about, you know, why am I feeling this way? But when it comes to policing, since it can have literally fatal consequences, I have said in my first budget we would put money into that budget to help us deal with implicit bias by retraining a lot of our police officers. I've met with a group of very distinguished, experienced police chiefs a few weeks ago. They admit it's an issue. They've got a lot of concerns. Mental health is one of the biggest concerns because now police are having to handle a lot of really difficult mental health problems on the street. They want support. They want more training. They want more assistance. And I think the federal government could be in a position where we would offer and provide that.
Absolutely not.
I'd like to respond.
Please.
First of all, I agree.
The federal
that a lot
government
of
needs to
people,
stay the
even
hell
within
out of
my
the
own
policing
party,
that goes
want
on
to
in local
give,
communities.
certain rights to people on watch lists and no-fly lists. I agree with you. When a person is on a watch list or a no-fly list.
Then
And
the
I have
Constitution
endorsement
doesn't
of
apply, right,
NRA,
Donald?
which I'm very proud of. These are very, very good people, and they're protecting the Second Amendment. But
Right.
I think we have to look very
Snake.
strongly at no-fly lists and watch lists, and when people are on there, even if they shouldn't be on there.
I'm sorry, but the Second Amendment doesn't say unless the government puts your name on a list. You don't have a right to bear arms unless the government decides that your name gets to go on some list. There are sitting members of Congress that are on that no-fly list.
Youth. And that's a term that I think was it's been horribly met, as you know. I think you've apologized for it. But I think it was a terrible thing to say. And when it comes to stop and frisk, you're talking about taking guns away. Well, I'm talking about taking guns away from gangs and people that use them.
Oh, right.
And I don't
Because
think,
if you're in a
I really
gang, you
think
don't have
disagree
a
with me on
constitutional
this,
right
if you
to a
wanna
gun
know the
either.
truth. I think maybe there's a political reason why you can't say it, but I really don't believe in New York
Yeah,
City.
exactly. We need to
stop
put both
and
of these
frisk.
two on the
We
no-fly
had
list.
2,200
Or how about this? Why don't we take away
murders.
guns from their
Stop
security
and
guards and
frisk.
see how they
We're
like it?
down to 500 murders. 500 murders is a lot of murders. Hard to believe. 500 is like supposed to be good. But we went from 2,200 to 500, and it was continued on by Mayor Bloomberg, and it was terminated by current mayor. But stop and frisk had a tremendous impact on the safety of New York City, tremendous beyond belief. So when you say it has no impact,
it didn't.
really did. It had a very, very big impact.
Well, it's also
causation isn't
fair to say,
correlation,
if we're going to
Donald.
talk about mayors, that under the current mayor.
Let me ask you something. Just because something is necessarily effective doesn't mean that you can take it away. You could stop all murders if you just banned all guns, got rid of all guns everywhere. But you cannot get rid of someone's constitutional rights just because someone gets hurt. That's absolutely wrong, immoral, and illegal, and unconstitutional.
Go to things that sound good that really did not have the kind of impact that we would want. Who disagrees with keeping neighborhoods safe? But let's also add, no one should disagree about respecting the rights of young men who live in those neighborhoods.
Thank you, Hillary.
And so we need to do a better job of working again with the communities, faith communities, business communities, as well as the police to try to deal with this problem.
This conversation is about race, and so, Mr. Trump, I have to ask
But
you.
I'd like to just respond, if I might.
Please, 20
I'd
seconds.
just like to respond.
Please respond, then I've got to
I will.
follow up.
Look, the African-American community has been let down by our politicians. They talk good around election time, like right now, and after the election, they said, see you later, I'll see you in 4 years.
He's right about that.
The African-American community, look, the community within the inner cities has been so badly treated. They've been abused and used in order to get votes by Democrat politicians.
Completely right. He's absolutely right about that. Looks like the live
Because that's
stream
what
is
it is. They've
buffering a
controlled
little
these
bit here.
communities for up to 100 years.
Mr. Trump, let me.
Well,
Unbroken.
I do-
And I will tell you,
Well, this
you look
moderator's
at the
a
inner cities,
pushover.
and I just left Detroit, and I just left Philadelphia, and I just, you've seen me. I've been all over the place. You decided to stay home, and that's okay. But I will tell you, I've been all over, and I've met some of the greatest people I'll ever meet within these communities, and they are very, very upset with what their politicians have told them and what their politicians have done.
Mr. Trump,
I think Donald just criticized me for preparing for this debate. And yes, I did. And you know what else I prepared for? I prepared to be president. And I think that's a good thing.
Mr. Trump, for 5 years, you perpetuated a false claim that the nation's first black president was not a natural-born citizen. You questioned his legitimacy. In the last couple of weeks, you acknowledge what most Americans have
Here we go.
accepted for years. The president was born in the United States. Can you tell us what took you so
I'll tell you just very simple to say. Sidney Blumenthal works for the campaign and very close friend of Secretary Clinton. And her campaign manager, Patty Doyle, went to, during the campaign, her campaign against President Obama, fought very hard. And you can go look it up and you can check it out. And if you look at CNN this past week, Patty Solis Doyle was on Wolf Blitzer saying that this happened. Blumenthal sent McClatchy, highly respected reporter at McClatchy, to Kenya to find out about it. They were pressing it very hard. She failed to get the birth certificate. When I got involved, I didn't fail. I got him to give The birth certificate. So I'm satisfied with it, and I'll tell you why I'm satisfied with it.
That was in
because I want to
2011.
get on to defeating ISIS, because I want to get on to creating jobs, because I want
He
to
wants
get
to
on
change
to
the
having a
subject
strong
right now.
border.
Yeah, he wants to move the
Because I want to
subject
get
away
on
from
to
this.
things that are very important
Because
to me
he looked like
and
a
that
fool.
are very important to the country.
I will let you respond. That's important, but I just want to get the answer here. The birth certificate was produced in 2011. You continued to tell the story and question the president's legitimacy in 2012, 13, 14, 15,
Yeah.
as recently as January. So the question is, what changed your
Well,
mind?
nobody was pressing it. Nobody was caring much about it. I figured you'd ask the question tonight, of course, but nobody was caring much about it. But I was the one that got him to produce the birth certificate, and I think I did a good job. Secretary Clinton also fought it. I mean, now everybody in mainstream is going to say, oh, that's not true. Look, it's true. Sidney Blumenthal sent a reporter. You just have to take a look at CNN, the last week, the interview.
By the way, we are fact-checking this right now. I'm pulling this off of a website that's showing that it does appear that Donald Trump's statements are correct, that surrogates of Hillary Clinton were involved in perpetuating the birther conspiracy here. Right here it looks that the story appears to have started with supporters of Clinton, an important distinction. They're rating it as false, but it does appear as if it was tied to Clinton initially.
I think that I've developed very, very good relationships over the last little while with the African American community. I think you can see that. And I feel that they really wanted me to come to that conclusion, and I think I did a great job and a great service, not only for the country, but even for the president, in getting him to produce his birth certificate.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, just listen to what you heard. And clearly, as Donald just admitted, he knew he was going to stand on this debate stage and Lester Holt was going to be asking us questions, so he tried to put the whole racist birther lie to bed. But it can't be dismissed that easily. He has really started his political activity based on this racist lie that our first black president was not an American citizen. There was absolutely no evidence for it, but he persisted. He persisted year after year because some of his supporters, people that he was
I wish Gary Johnson was up
trying
there
to bring
tonight.
into his fold, apparently believed it or wanted to believe it. But remember, Donald started his career back in 1973 being sued by the Justice Department for racial discrimination because he would not rent apartments in one of his developments to African Americans.
She's right about
and he
that.
made sure that the people who worked for him understood that was the policy. He actually was sued twice by the Justice Department. So he has a long record of engaging in racist behavior. And the birther lie was a very hurtful one. Barack Obama is a man of great dignity, and I could tell how much it bothered him and annoyed him that this was being touted and used against him. But I like to remember what Michelle Obama said in her amazing speech at our Democratic National Convention. When they go low, we go high. And Barack Obama went high, despite Donald Trump's best efforts to bring him down.
Mr. Trump, you can respond, then we're going to move on
I
to
would
the next
love to
segment.
respond. First of all, I got to watch, in preparing for this, some of your debates against Barack Obama. You treated him with terrible disrespect. And I watched the way you talk now about how lovely everything is and how wonderful you are. It doesn't work that way. You were after him. You were trying to.
Yeah, but Donald, she came to your wedding. You guys are both best friends. You don't get to use that same logic unless it's going to be used against you, buddy.
I don't think you can deny that. But just last week, your campaign manager said it was true. So when you try to act holier than thou, it really doesn't work. It really doesn't. Now, as far as the lawsuit, yes, when I was very young, I went into my father's company, had a real estate company in Brooklyn and Queens, and we, along with many, many other companies throughout the country, it was a federal lawsuit, were sued. We settled the suit with no admission of guilt. It was very easy to do, but they sued many people. I notice you bring that up a lot, and I also notice the very nasty commercials that you do on me in so many different ways, which I don't do on you. Maybe I'm trying to save the money, but frankly, I look at that and I say, isn't that amazing? Because I settled that lawsuit with no admission of guilt, but that was a lawsuit brought against many real estate firms, and it's just one of those things. I'll go on one step further. In Palm Beach, Florida, tough community, a brilliant community, a wealthy community, probably the wealthiest community there is in the world. I opened a club and really got great credit for it. No discrimination against African Americans, against Muslims, against anybody.
Muslims.
And it's a tremendously successful club, and I'm so glad I did it. And I have been given great credit for what I did, and I'm very, very proud of it. And that's
Great.
the way
Okay.
I
Well,
feel.
we love
That
watching
is
you
the
pat
true
yourself
way
on the
I
back
feel.
here,
Our
Donald.
next segment is called Securing America. We want to start with a 21st century war happening every day in this country. Our institutions are under cyber attack, and our secrets are being stolen. So my question is, who's behind it, and how do we fight it? Secretary Clinton, this answer goes to you.
Well, I think cybersecurity, cyber warfare will be one of the biggest challenges facing the next president, because clearly we're facing at this point two different kinds of adversaries. There are the independent hacking groups that do it mostly for commercial reasons, to try to steal information that they then can use to make money. But increasingly, we are seeing cyber attacks coming from states, organs of states.
All right, so
The
let's take a
most
little quick break, guys. I want to
recent
show
and
you
troubling
Governor
of these
Gary
has been
Johnson, who
Russia.
he should be in the debates
There's no
tonight, in my
doubt now
mind.
that Russia
I wanted to
has
show you
used
guys some of
cyber
his tweets, and he's
attacks
been doing live tweeting of
all
the show
kinds of
tonight,
organizations
and
in our
I thought you guys might want to take a look at what Governor Gary Johnson is saying. He is the Libertarian presidential candidate. For those of you who don't know, he was not included in the debates because he did not meet the 15% threshold. But let's take a look and see what Gary is saying over here. I think he's probably got something, some interesting things to say about the debate. Take a look at this right here. Here we go. Governor Gary Johnson. Let me pull up the screen for you guys so you don't have to look at me. You can take a look at Gary. What is Gary saying tonight? Looks like Gary is saying, self-congratulations calculator out there. Governor Gary Johnson tweets, absolutely correct. Says he agrees with Hillary. Don't vote for real Donald Trump. He says he's still waiting to be inspired. Right here, he says he's never questioned the birth of the POTUS in the USA, as I think the overwhelming majority never had. He talks about how stop and frisk adversely affects the black community. Absolutely correct, Gary. Don't we wish that you would be there right now? Stop and frisk unconstitutional? Yes, absolutely. Gary also says there are sitting members of Congress on the no-fly list. Here we go. He says, Hillary Clinton, it's not whether it's effective, it's whether it violates the Constitution. Absolutely correct. And Governor says, criminal justice reform begins with ending the war on drugs. Hillary has been on the wrong side of this issue. Thank you very much, Gary. Absolutely. So let's get back to the regular debate so that you guys can see what's going on over there. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the show. And let's pop you back right over there.
Who served in Republican information in administration
2 minutes has
have
expired.
said that Donald is unfit to be the commander-in-chief. It's comments like that that really worry people who understand the threats that we face.
Mr. Trump, you have 2 minutes in the same question. Who's behind it? How do we fight
I do
it?
want to say that I was just endorsed, and more are coming next week. It'll be over 200 admirals, many of them are here, admirals and generals endorsed me to lead this country. That just happened, and many more are coming, and I'm very proud of it. In addition, I was just endorsed by ICE. They've never endorsed anybody before on immigration. I was just endorsed by ICE. I was just recently endorsed 16,500 Border Patrol agents. So when Secretary Clinton talks about this, I mean, I'll take the admirals and I'll take the generals any day over the political hacks that I see that have led our country so quickly over the last 10 years with their knowledge.
Damn.
Okay?
Point for Trump.
Because look at the mess that we're in. Look at the mess that we're in. As far as the cyber, I agree to parts of what Secretary
As far as the cyber, what is the
we
cyber?
should be better than anybody.
You know, back when I was a young man, when you said you wanted a cyber, that meant something bad.
Into the DNC. She's saying Russia, 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 but maybe it was. I mean, it could be Russia, but it could also be China. Could also be lots
China.
of other people. It also could be somebody sitting on their bed that weighs.
If you're playing a drinking
400
game, you got to
pounds,
drink now
okay?
because you said
You
China.
don't know who broke in to DNC, but what did we learn with DNC? We learned that Bernie Sanders was taken advantage of by your people.
Absolutely
By
correct.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Look what happened to her. But Bernie Sanders was taken advantage of. That's what we learned. Now, whether that was Russia, whether that was China, whether
Governor
it was
Gary
another
Johnson
country,
just
we don't know.
tweeted in
Because the
regards to
truth is,
national
under
security.
President Obama, we've lost control of things that we used to have
Based
control
on what
of.
I know,
We
I'd
came
pardon
in
Snowden.
with the internet. We came up with the internet. And I think Secretary Clinton and myself would agree very much. When you look at what ISIS is doing with the internet, they're beating us at our own game. ISIS. So we have to get very, very tough on cyber and cyber warfare. It is a huge problem. I have a son.
Tough on
He's 10
cyber.
years
It's a
old.
huge
He
problem.
has computers. He is so good with these computers. It's unbelievable. The security aspect of cyber is very, very
cyber?
tough. And maybe it's hardly doable.
Say
But I will
cybersecurity,
say, we are
Donald.
not doing the job we should be doing. But that's true throughout our whole governmental society. We have so many things that we have to do better, Lester, and certainly cyber is one of them.
Secretary Clinton?
Well, I think there are a number of issues that we should be addressing. I have put forth a plan to defeat ISIS. It does involve going after them online. I think we need to do much more with our tech companies to prevent ISIS and their operatives from being able to use the internet to radicalize, even direct people in our country and Europe and elsewhere. But we also have to intensify our air strikes against ISIS and eventually support our Arab and Kurdish partners to be able to actually take out ISIS in Raqqa and their claim of being a caliphate. We're making progress. Our military is assisting in Iraq, and we're hoping that within the year we'll be able to push ISIS out of Iraq and then, really squeeze them in Syria. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that they've had foreign fighters coming to volunteer for them, foreign money, foreign weapons. So we have to make this the top priority.
And where did they get that money? And where did they get those weapons,
do everything
Hillary?
possible to take out their leadership. I was involved in a number of efforts to take out al-Qaeda leadership when I was Secretary of State,
What's
including, of
Aleppo?
course, taking out bin
Make the
Laden.
damn
I think we
Aleppo.
need to go after Baghdadi as well, make that one of our organizing principles, because we've got to defeat ISIS and we've got to do everything we can to disrupt their propaganda efforts online.
You mentioned ISIS, and we think of ISIS certainly as over there, but there are American citizens who have been inspired to commit acts of terror on American soil. The latest incident, of course, the bombings we just saw in New York and New Jersey, the knife attack at a mall in Minnesota, and the last year,
Damn
the
knives.
attacks in San Bernardino and Orlando. I'll ask this to both of you. Tell us specifically how you would prevent homegrown attacks by American citizens, Mr. Trump.
Well, first I have to say one thing, very important. Secretary Clinton is talking about taking out ISIS. We will take out ISIS. Well, President Obama and Secretary Clinton created a vacuum the way they got out of Iraq. Because they got out, they shouldn't have been in, but once they got in, the way they got out was a disaster. And ISIS was formed. So she talks about taking them out. She's been doing it a long time. She's been trying to take them out for a long time. But they wouldn't
by
have even been
funding them?
formed if they left some troops behind, like 10,000 or maybe something more than that. And then you wouldn't have had them. Or, as I've been saying for a long time, and I think you'll agree because I said it to you once, had we taken the oil, and we should have taken the oil, ISIS would not have been able to form either because the oil was their primary source of income. And now they have the oil all over the place, including the oil, a lot
Which
of the
they
oil
cannot
in
refine.
Libya, which was another one of her disasters.
Yes,
Secretary
ISIS does have that oil, but they
Well,
have
I
no
hope
way
the
of
fact
refining
checkers
it.
are turning up the volume and really working hard. Donald supported the invasion of Iraq.
Wrong.
That
Yeah,
is
no, she's
absolutely
right.
Wrong.
proved
He did.
over and over again.
Wrong.
He actually advocated for the actions we took in Libya and urged that Gaddafi be taken out after actually doing some business with him one time. But the larger point, he says this constantly, is George W. Bush made the agreement about when American troops would leave Iraq, not Barack Obama. And the only way that American troops could have stayed in Iraq is to get an agreement from the then Iraqi government that would have protected our troops, and the Iraqi government would not give that. But let's talk about the question you asked, Lester. The question you asked is, what do we do here in the United States? That's the most important part of this. How do we prevent attacks? How do we protect our people? And I think we've got to have an intelligence surge where we are looking for every scrap of information. I was so proud of law enforcement in New York, in Minnesota, in New Jersey. You know, they responded so quickly, so professionally to the attacks that occurred by Rahami, and they brought him down. And we may find out more information because he is still alive, which may prove to be an intelligence benefit. So we've got to do everything we can to vacuum up intelligence from Europe, from the Middle East. That means we've got to work more closely with our allies. And that's something that Donald has been very dismissive of. We're working with NATO, the longest military alliance in the history of the world, to really turn our attention to terrorism. We're working with our friends in the Middle East, many of which, as you know, are Muslim-majority nations.
I want you guys to see this fact check right now. Donald Trump bashes Libya intervention, which he strongly advocated for in 2011. This is from Media right now.
Muslim nations
right here,
and with the American Muslim community.
You can see,
they're on the
I'll
front
share
lines.
this in the
they
stream.
can provide information
He
to
did
us
advocate
that we
for
might
the
not get
bombing of
anywhere
Libya.
else.
But so did
they
Hillary.
need to have close working cooperation with law enforcement in these communities, not be alienated and pushed away, as some of Donald's rhetoric, unfortunately, has led to.
Mr.
Well, I'd have to respond.
Please respond.
The Secretary said very strongly about working with. We've been working with them for many years. And we have the greatest mess anyone's ever seen. You look at the Middle East, it's a total mess. Under your direction to a large extent. But you look at the Middle East, you started the Iran deal. That's another beauty where you have a country that was ready to fall. I mean, they were doing so badly. They were choking on the sanctions, and now they're going to be actually probably a major power at some point pretty soon, the way they're going. But when you look at NATO, I was asked on a major show, what do you think of NATO? Now, you have to understand, I'm a business person. I did really well, but I have common sense. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I haven't given lots of thought to NATO, but two things. Number one, the 28 countries of NATO, many of them aren't paying their fair share. Number two, and that bothers me because we should be, as we're defending them, and they should at least be paying us what they're supposed to be paying by treaty and contract. And number two, I said, and very strongly, NATO could be obsolete because, and I was very strong on this, and it was actually covered very accurately in the New York Times, which is unusual for the New York Times, to be honest. But I said, they do not focus on terror. And I was very strong, and I said it numerous times. And about 4 months ago, I read on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that NATO is opening up a major terror division. And I think that's great. And I think we should get, because we pay approximately 73% of the cost of NATO. It's a lot of money to protect other people. But I'm all for NATO. But I said they have to focus on terror also. And they're going to do that. And that was, believe me, I'm sure I'm not going to get credit for it, but that was largely because of what I was saying and my criticism of NATO. I think we have to get NATO to go into the Middle East with us in addition to surrounding nations, and we have to knock the hell out of ISIS, and we have to do it fast. When ISIS formed in this vacuum created by Barack Obama and Secretary Clinton, and believe me, you were the ones that took out the troops. Not only that, you named the day. They couldn't believe it. They sat back probably and said, I can't believe it. They said, no, wait a minute.
We've covered
when they formed, this is something that never should have happened. It should have never happened. Now, you're talking about taking out ISIS, but you were there and you were Secretary of State when it was a little infant. Now it's in over 30 countries. And you're going to stop them? I don't think so.
Mr. Trump, a lot of these are judgment questions. You had supported the war in Iraq before the invasion. What makes your judgment?
I did not support the war in Iraq.
That's a lie.
That is a mainstream media nonsense put out by her.
He's lying.
Because she, frankly, I think the best person in her campaign is mainstream media.
My question is, since
Ooh,
would you like
good
to
point.
why is your,
I was
why is your
against the war.
judgment?
Wait a minute. I was against the war in Iraq, just so you put it out.
The record shows otherwise.
The record
but why
does not show that.
Why is your
The
judgment
record
any?
shows that I'm right. When I did an interview with Howard Stern, very lightly, first time anyone's asked me that, I said, very lightly, I don't know, maybe, who knows, essentially. I then did an interview with Neil Cavuto. We talked about the economy is more important. I then spoke to Sean Hannity, which everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. I had numerous conversations with Sean Hannity at Fox, and Sean Hannity said, and he called me the other day, and I spoke to him about it. He said, you were totally against the war, because he was for the war.
Why is your judgment better than...
And that was before the war started. Sean Hannity said very strongly to me and other people, he's willing to say, but nobody wants to call him, I was against the war. He said, you used to have fights with me because Sean was in favor of the war. And I understand that side also, not very much.
So are you, Donald. So are you.
But nobody calls Sean Hannity. And then they did an article
because
in a
he's a
major
shill.
magazine shortly after the war started.
Because everybody knows he's in your back pocket, Donald.
But they did an article which had me totally against the war in Iraq. And one of your compatriots said, you know, whether it was before or right after, Trump was definitely, because if you read this article, there's no doubt. But if somebody, and I'll ask the press, if somebody would call up Sean Hannity, this was before the war started, he and I used to have arguments about the war. I said it's a terrible and a stupid thing. It's going to destabilize the Middle East, and that's exactly what it's done. It's been a disaster.
My reference was to what you had said in 2002, and my question was, why is your judgment any different than Mrs. Clinton?
Well, I have much better judgment than she does. There's no question about that. I also have a much better temperament than she has. You know, I have a much better.
Yeah, right.
Let me tell you,
that is fun. They're laughing because that's
hundreds of millions of dollars on an advertising. You know, they get Madison Avenue into a room, they put names. Oh, temperament. Let's go after. I think my strongest asset, maybe by far, is my temperament. I have a winning temperament. I know how to win. She does not know how to win.
Clinton.
Wait, the AFL-CIO the other day, behind the blue screen. I don't know who you were talking to, Secretary Clinton, but you were totally out of control. I said, there's a person with a temperament that's got a problem.
Secretary Clinton.
Woo, okay.
She looks like she's feeling saucy. All right, bring it on, Hillary. This is your moment.
Let's talk about two important issues that were briefly mentioned by Donald. First, NATO. You know, NATO as a military alliance has something called Article 5, and basically it says this: an attack on one is an attack on all. And do you know the only time it's ever been invoked? After 9/11, when the 28 nations of NATO said that they would go to Afghanistan with us to fight terrorism, something that they still are doing by our side. With respect to Iran, when I became Secretary of State, Iran was weeks away from having enough nuclear material to form a bomb. They had mastered the nuclear fuel cycle under the Bush administration. They had built covert facilities. They had stocked them with centrifuges that were whirling away. And we had sanctioned them. I voted for every sanction against Iran when I was in the Senate, but it wasn't enough. So I spent a year and a half putting together a coalition that included Russia and China to impose the toughest sanctions on Iran. And we did drive them to the negotiating table. And my successor, John Kerry, and President Obama got a deal that put a lid on Iran's nuclear program without firing a single shot. That's diplomacy. That's coalition building. That's working with other nations. The other day, I saw Donald saying that there were some Iranian sailors on a ship in the waters off of Iran, and they were taunting American sailors who were on a nearby ship. He said, you know, if they taunted our sailors, I'd blow them out of the water and start another war. That's not good judgment. that is not the right temperament to be commander-in-chief.
Yeah, she's correct.
To be
Point for
taunted.
Hillary.
And the worst part
No,
of
they were
what we've
taunting
heard
us.
Donald say has been about nuclear
You don't
weapons.
respond to every
He
taunt,
has said
Donald.
repeatedly that he didn't care if other nations got nuclear weapons, Japan, South Korea, even Saudi Arabia. It has been
This
the
man does not
policy
have
of
the
the United
temperament to be
States,
president.
Democrats and Republicans, to do everything we could to reduce the proliferation of nuclear weapons. He even said, well, you know, if there were a nuclear war in the East Asia, well, you know, that's fine. You know, have
That's a pretty good
time,
Donald Trump
folks.
impression there.
And in fact, his cavalier attitude about nuclear weapons is so deeply troubling.
Correct.
That is
Yes,
the
it
number
is.
one threat we face in the world, and it becomes particularly threatening if terrorists ever get their hands on any nuclear material. So a man who can be provoked by a tweet should not have his fingers anywhere near the nuclear
Boom.
codes.
Point for
as far
Hillary.
as I think
Absolutely correct.
anyone with any sense about this should be concerned.
That
Hillary,
line's
point
getting
to
a little
Hillary.
bit old, I must say. Listen,
It's a good one, though.
I would like to,
well describes the problem.
It's not an accurate one.
Woo!
It's not an accurate one.
Sassy
so
mama.
I just want to give a lot of things and just to respond. I agree with her on one thing. The single greatest problem the world has is nuclear armament, nuclear weapons. Not global warming like you think and your president thinks.
Like
Nuclear
you
is
think
the
in your
single greatest.
president things. This
Mr.
man has a
Economist,
third grade speaking
We
level.
defend Japan. We defend Germany. We defend South Korea. We defend Saudi Arabia.
This
we
is
defend
how you do in your president
They do not
things.
pay us.
This is going to
But
be
they
our
should be
president,
paying
ladies
us
and gentlemen.
because
We're in
funding tremendous
trouble.
Service, and we're losing a fortune. That's why we're losing. We lose on everything. I say, who makes these?
If you guys were confused about where that commentary is coming from, it's actually coming from me if you're in this stream. Thanks so much for watching. This is Austin Petersen, former Libertarian Party presidential candidate, doing this live stream talk. Thanks a lot for watching. Let's get back to the debate.
Selling us cars by the minute.
We need to move on.
Wait, but it's very important. All I said was they may have to defend themselves or they have to help us out. We're a country that owes $20 trillion. They have to help us out.
Our
As
last-
far as the nuclear is concerned, I agree. It is the single greatest threat that this country has.
Which leads to my next question as we enter our last segment here still on the subject of securing America. On nuclear weapons, President Obama reportedly considered changing the nation's longstanding policy on first use. Do you support the current policy? Mr. Trump, you have 2 minutes on it.
Well, I have to say that, for what Secretary Clinton was saying about nuclear with Russia, she's very cavalier in the way she talks about various countries. But Russia's been expanding. They have a much newer capability than we do. We have not been updating from the new standpoint. I looked the other night, I was seeing B-52s. They're old enough that your father, your grandfather could be flying them. We are not keeping up with other countries.
We've
I would
got
like everybody
AC-130s
to
now,
end it,
Donald.
just get rid of it. But I would certainly not do first strike. I think that once the nuclear alternative happens, it's over. At the same time, we have to be prepared. I can't take anything off the table.
Yeah, Trump makes a good
Because
point
you
here.
look at some of these countries, you look at North Korea, we're doing nothing there. China should solve that problem for us. China should go into North Korea. China is totally
They can't do that
powerful
because it would
as
be a
relates
humanitarian
to North
crisis.
Korea. And by the way, another one powerful is the worst deal I think I've ever seen negotiated that you started is the Iran deal. Iran is one of their biggest trading partners. Iran has power over North Korea. And when they made that horrible deal with Iran, they should have included the fact that they do something with respect to North Korea. And they should have done something with respect to Yemen.
Just
and all these
FYI, I'm
other
popping over
places.
to Governor Gary
No one asked
Johnson's tweets.
to
If
Secretary
you take a look, Governor Gary Johnson is live tweeting this debate tonight. You guys can see right here. He's made some statements here. He said that he imposed the Iraq War from the beginning. He thought that we had the military surveillance capability to see the WMDs and act on them. Governor Johnson is talking about the Iran deal. It seems that Governor Gary Johnson was in favor of the Iran deal. This is what he's tweeting right now. Let's get back to the debate.
The right deal. This is one of the worst deals ever made by any country in history. The deal with Iran will lead to nuclear problems. All they have to do is sit back 10 years, and they don't have to do much,
Your
and
2
they're going
minutes
to
has
end up
expired.
getting nuclear. I met with Bibi Netanyahu the other day. Believe me, he is not a happy camper.
All right. Mrs. Clinton, Secretary Clinton, you have 2 minutes.
Let me start by saying words matter. Words matter when you run for president, and they really matter when you are president. And I want to reassure our allies in Japan and South
Governor
Korea
Gary
and
Johnson
elsewhere
agreeing with
that
real
we
Donald
have
Trump
mutual
about
defense
other countries not
treaties,
paying their
and we
fair
will
share for
honor
our
them.
military. He says even
It
a
is
blind squirrel
essential
finds a
that
nut
America's
every now
word be
and
good.
then. Good point,
So
Governor
I know
Johnson.
that this campaign has caused some questioning and some worries on the part of many leaders across the globe. I've talked with a number of them, but I want to, on behalf of myself and I think on behalf of a majority of the American people, say that, our word is good. It's also important that we look at the entire global situation. There's no doubt that we have other problems with Iran, but personally I'd rather deal with the other problems having put that lid on their nuclear program than still to be facing that. And Donald never tells you what he would do. Would he have started a war? Would he have bombed Iran? If he's going to criticize a deal that has been very successful in giving us access to Iranian facilities that we never had before, then he should tell us what his alternative would be. But it's like his plan to defeat ISIS. He says it's a secret plan, but the only secret is that he has no plan. So
you have
we
to have a
need
secret
be
plan.
more
You don't
precise
no
in how
military
we
commander
talk about
reveals
these
their
issues.
plans
People
before they
around
go to
the
battle,
world
Hillary.
follow
That's
our
just common
presidential
sense.
Campaigns so closely, trying to get hints.
Here comes
about
that boy.
What we will do. Can they rely on us?
Shit, what
Are we
up?
going to lead the world with strength and in accordance with our values? That's what I intend to do. I intend to be a leader of our country that people can count on, both here at home and around the world, to make decisions that will further peace and prosperity, but also stand up to bullies, whether they're abroad or at home. We cannot let those who would try to destabilize the world, to interfere with American interests and security, to be given any opportunities at all.
Is expired.
Lester,
Mr.
one
Trump,
thing I'd like to say.
very quickly, for 20
I will
seconds,
go very
please.
quickly, but I will tell you that Hillary will tell you to go to her website and read all about how to defeat ISIS, which she could have defeated by never having it, get going in the first place. Right now, it's getting tougher and tougher to defeat them because they're in more and more places, more and more states, more and more nations.
Mr. Trump.
And it's a big problem. And as far as Japan is concerned, I want to help all of our allies. But we are losing billions and billions of dollars. We cannot be the policeman of the world.
Amen.
We cannot protect countries all over the world.
We have just a-
when they're not
Libertarian
paying
point to
us
Donald
what
Trump.
We need.
We have
And
just a few final
She doesn't
questions.
say that because she's got no business ability. We need heart. We need a lot of things. But you have to have some basic ability. And sadly, she doesn't have that. All of the things that she's talking about could have been taken care of during the last 10 years, let's say, while she had great power. But they weren't taken care of. And if she ever wins this race, they won't be taken
Mr.
care
Trump,
of.
this year, Secretary Clinton became the first woman nominated for president by a major party. Earlier this month, you said she doesn't have, quote, a presidential look. She's standing here right now. What did you mean by that?
She doesn't have the look. She doesn't have the stamina. I said she doesn't have the stamina. And I don't believe she does have the stamina. To be president of this country, you need tremendous stamina.
The quote was,
You
I
have,
just don't think she has
wait
a
a minute, Leslie, you
presidential
asked me a
look.
question. Did you ask me a question? You have to be able to negotiate our trade deals. You have to be able to negotiate, that's right, with Japan, with Saudi Arabia. I mean, can you imagine we're defending Saudi Arabia, and with all of the money they have, we're defending them and they're not paying? All you have to do is speak to them. Wait, you have so many different things you have to be able to do, and I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina.
Let's let her respond.
Well, as soon as he travels to 112 countries and negotiates a peace deal, a ceasefire, a release of dissidents.
Yeah,
an
because we
opening
all
of
know about
new,
you negotiating peace under
opportunities in
sniper
nations
fire,
around the
Hillary.
world, or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee. He can talk to me about
Well, he
stamina.
will if he becomes the president.
The world.
Oh, she nailed him right there. When he stands in front of a congressional
Hillary
committee for
has
10 hours, he can talk about
experience,
stamina.
but
Point
it's
to
bad
Hillary. Well done.
experience. We have made so many bad deals during the last. So she's got experience, that I agree, but it's bad experience. Whether
bad.
It's the Iran
Bad
deal that you're so
experience.
in
It's very
love with, where
bad.
we gave them $150 billion back, whether it's the Iran deal, whether it's anything you could name, you almost can't name a good deal. I agree. She's got experience, but it's bad experience. And this country can't afford to have another 4 years of that kind of experience.
We are at the final question.
One thing,
Very
Lester,
quickly, because
is,
we're at the
you
final
know,
question
he
now.
tried to switch from looks to stamina. But this is a man who has called women pigs, slobs, and dogs.
Yeah.
And someone who
And
has said
Hillary looks terrific tonight, by the way.
pregnancy is an inconvenience to employers, who has
never
said
said that.
women don't deserve equal pay unless they do as good a job
Didn't
as
say
men.
Well, that's true.
And one of the worst things he said was about a woman in a beauty contest. He loves beauty contests, supporting them and hanging
Don't
around
we
them.
all, Hillary? Don't hate on
And
beauty contests.
He called this woman Miss Piggy. Then he called her Miss Housekeeping because she was Latina. Donald, she has a name.
Where did you find
her
this?
name
Where
is
did you find
Alicia
this?
Machado.
Where did you find
And
this?
she has become a U.S. citizen, and you can bet
Oh, really?
she's going to vote this November.
Okay, good.
Oh,
Let me just
Hillary.
tell you,
Mr. Trump,
me
give
just-
us 10
Damn.
seconds, and then
You
we're gonna have
know,
the final
Body
question.
blow to
Hillary is hitting
Donald.
me with tremendous commercials. Some of it said in entertainment. Some of it said somebody who's been very vicious to me, Rosie O'Donnell. I said very tough things to her, and I think everybody would agree that she deserves it, and nobody feels sorry for her. But you want to know?
Probably
that,
true.
I was going to say something
Please, very quick.
extremely rough to Hillary, to her family, and I said to myself, I can't do it. I just can't do it.
You don't get
It's
credit for not
inappropriate.
saying something
It's
mean,
not nice.
Donald.
But she spent hundreds of millions of dollars on negative ads on me, many of which are absolutely untrue.
Well, they're all
untrue
just
and they're
your quotes,
misrepresentations.
Donald. All we've got to do
And
is listen to you
I will tell
talk.
you this, Lester. It's not nice, and I don't deserve
It's
that.
not
But
nice.
it's certainly
What a
not a
baby.
nice thing that she's done. It's hundreds of millions of ads, and the only
Cry about
gratifying
it,
thing is
Donald.
I saw the polls come in today, and with all of that money,
We
over
have to move on to
$200
the
million
final question.
is spent, and I'm either winning or tied.
One
And
of
I've
you-
spent
He's right about
practically
that.
Nothing.
One of
He
you
is winning.
will not win this election. So my final question to you tonight, are you willing to accept the outcome as the will of the voters? Secretary Clinton?
Well, I support our democracy. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I certainly will support the outcome of this election. And I know Donald's trying very hard to plant doubts about it, but I hope the people out there understand this election's really up to you. It's not about us so much as it is about you and your families and the kind of country and future you want. So I sure hope you will get out and vote as though your future depended on it, because I think it does.
Mr.
Right,
Trump,
vote for Gary
quickly,
Johnson.
Same question. Will you accept the outcome as the will of the voters?
I want to make America great again. We are a nation that is seriously troubled. We're losing our jobs. People are pouring in to our country. The other day,
Actually,
we were
more people are
deporting
leaving.
800 people, and perhaps they passed the wrong button, they pressed the wrong button, or perhaps, worse than that, it was corruption. But these people that we were going to deport for good reason ended up becoming citizens. And it was 800, and now it turns out it might be 1,800, and they don't even know.
Will you accept
Look,
the outcome
here's
of the
the story.
election?
I want to make America great again. I'm going to be able to do it. I don't believe Hillary will. The answer is, if she wins, I will absolutely support her.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us. That concludes our debate for this evening. A spirited one. We covered a lot of ground. Not everything, as I suspected we wouldn't. The next presidential debates are scheduled for October 9th at Washington University in St. Louis.
Well, and that's it. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Who won the debate? Drop your comments below and tell us who you think won the debate tonight. I have to say that I think that they both made pretty good points. At times, both of them did sound like libertarians on certain issues, but then they would turn around and be an authoritarian status on some completely other issue. This is why we libertarians need to have our voices in the debate. That's why we needed Gary Johnson up there on stage to take these two tyrants to task, and it is an absolute tragedy of justice that Gary Johnson was not included in these debates. Let's hope that we can get his poll numbers so high after watching these two authoritarians happens after the American people, supposedly 200 million people tuned into this debate tonight. So let's hope that the American people do the right thing and Governor Gary Johnson's poll numbers start to rise so that he will be in these debates. Think about it. When it comes to the issues of criminal justice, Hillary Clinton was striking the libertarian note on that issue about stop and frisk being totally unconstitutional. She's right. Point to Hillary Clinton on that issue. Donald Trump lies about his support for the Iraq war before it happened. Blatantly lied about it, because Donald Trump, prior to 2003, did support the invasion of Iraq. And then once the polls started to go against the war, then Donald Trump changed his mind and says he's against it. Well, I'm completely for that. I want politicians to change their minds to be more libertarian. And the rhetoric that Donald Trump is using on foreign policy is sounding libertarian. But think about this. It's probably not because Donald Trump has had a change of heart or that he really is a libertarian on foreign policy. It's probably more likely that the American people are becoming more libertarian on foreign policy, and Donald Trump is changing his positions to come into coalition with what the American people believe. If I had to decide who won this debate tonight, I would probably give the edge to Donald Trump, but just barely, because he's just a better debater when it comes to filibustering, when it comes to shutting it down, when it comes to changing the subject. He still speaks at a third grade level, though. He sounds like someone that you would have debated in middle school. So this is not the type of person that you want to have nuclear weapons. This is not the type of person that you want to be your top diplomat, the top ambassador for the people of the United States. I thought Hillary looked great. I thought she sounded great. I thought she made good points. But unfortunately, Donald Trump just outshines her in these kinds of venues because he just is a much better speaker. Her eyes looked beautiful tonight. Her dress was commie red, but it looked fantastic. But she did get flustered several times, and you can't have that happen. Donald Trump never appeared flustered even once in the debate, so I think I have to give the edge to Donald on that one. That doesn't mean I like Donald. It just means that I think that he outperformed her, but just barely. On issues of guns, Hillary Clinton, both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton sounding anti-gun tonight. Donald Trump ringing the bell against the Second Amendment when it comes to the no-fly list. Hillary Clinton agreeing with him. And it's just amazing because whenever a crime is committed, the first thing that politicians want to do is come in and take away the constitutional rights of innocent people. And to me, it's just absolutely wrong. I can't vote for either one of these tyrants or authoritarians. I'm going to be voting for Governor Gary Johnson this year. You do whatever it is that you think is right. I've heard talk that there are going to be some protests against Anheuser-Busch who are sponsoring these debates. I'm going to be getting some more information on that soon. But as for me right now, ladies and gentlemen, I have not been drinking during this entire debate. If you have, good for you. It's time for me to go have a glass of beer. Have a good night. And do me a favor, if you guys like my content, go to the libertarianrepublic.com. If you like our stuff, you can buy an ad-free subscription. It's just $5. Let me just show you guys really quick. I know a lot of you guys are big fans of the Libertarian Republic, but you guys will always say, oh, well, there's too many ads. Well, take a look at what the libertarianrepublic.com looks like without any ads. I think you guys are going to be really pleased by this. Let me pull this up right here for you guys so you can see what the Libertarian Republic really looks like, how it's supposed to be. And this is how we're able to fund libertarian journalism, guys. I just want to put this real quick plug in there for you guys. Right up here, members log in. You guys can subscribe for $5 a month. It's really simple to cancel if you don't like it. $5 a month or $55 for a year. Again, you can just cancel at any time. You can purchase a membership here. And look at this beautiful site. This is what it's like. No pop-ups, no ads, just a gorgeous, beautiful libertarian website. Support libertarian journalism, guys, because that's how we're going to build the revolution in the future. Thanks very much for everyone who watched the live stream. Do me a favor, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, and don't forget to come back every single day to your home for economic freedom and personal liberty at the Libertarian